Hey everybody, if I can have your attention please, and if you're ready to sit back and start the show. I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight. Liam Cheney I've known him, it turns out, for my entire VPE career of about 11 years. He was working as a contractor for NASA for Fox 1, and then he was integration systems engineer for Fox 1B, AMSAT, which interestingly, when I first met him in person, was at the launch of Fox 1A in the launch party group waiting for the bus. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I'm Liam Cheney. You're a systems engineer on the Fox 1B. You've got a problem with a single point of failure in your power there." And I was like, gee whiz. Drop the bomb. So it turns out it's been all a good relationship since then. So, and he worked with us through Fox 1B, and he was also with mission manager for Gulf until he recently left NASA, and now he has working as a consultant for Footstep Aerospace and from his home in Kansas City. And here's Liam.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. So it's a privilege to be here with all of you. My first time at this symposium actually was back in 2011. This is my second time. But I was a student at Cal Poly at the time and working on my thesis. And I actually got some really good advice from some of the people probably in this room back then. So after that, I worked with SRI and TIVAC, and that's where Jerry and I met, originally working with Fox 1A and then RadFXSat. And after that, I worked with NASA. I led the CubeSat launch initiative, and as Jerry mentioned, I worked with the Gulf 1 and Gulf T missions, and tried really hard to get those a flight. So hopefully those get a flight at some point. I'm sure there's going to be some really good opportunities coming along. So I've always been inspired by the innovation and the community surrounding AMSAT. So where we are now is we live in a new space age. You know, access to orbit is more available than ever before. We have constellations and mega constellations, that's a word now, of small satellites that are helping us to connect, protect, and understand the Earth. And a lot of the work that you've all done has paved the way for that. We even have manufacturing that is being done in space, and I think that's going to be a huge industry that's going to just explode pretty soon. None of that would be possible without collaboration and shared curiosity, and I think that's something that is really something that I see in this community. So tonight I wanted to call us to maybe reflect about how we first came into this the world of space and satellites, who first inspired our own curiosity in it. Maybe it was a mentor, a book, maybe a moment of wonder, seeing something that had never been done before. And I'd like to share with you a little bit about my story and how others have helped shape that story. So as a kid, I tended to take things apart, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. My mother probably really enjoyed that. One time I thought I could create a candy cane, and so I took some toothpaste and I put it on a plate, put the plate in the microwave, and you just have to cook it, right? There were some pretty cool bubbles and things, if I remember correctly. I don't recommend that. That's not the easiest way to get a candy cane. But I eventually became very fascinated by airplanes, rockets, and the unknown. And my family culture was really conducive to those interests. They were very encouraging, and it was a just really fertile ground for that kind of a thing. And there's so many, countless number of people that have encouraged me over the years. Two really stand out. One is my grandfather, who was an engineer, and one is my dad, who was not an engineer, but very much an encourager. So I want to share a little bit about those two people who inspired me. So my grandfather, Hugh Brady, we called him Grampy. He's my grandfather on my mother's side. He was a navigator for the U.S. Army Air Force, and that picture in the top left, I think he was training to be a radio operator as part of his service. It's pretty long ago, but maybe somebody has some historical knowledge of the type of radio he's using. If you do, let me know. Okay, you're gonna have to write that down for me. So after his military service, he became a program manager for the Apollo guidance system. And so you can see him, at the microphone right there. And that was just I think a grand adventure. It really was a prominent time in his life and in my family's history. He knew some of the Apollo astronauts personally. I think that when they would come and visit the people building the guidance system, that must have been the opportunity that gave him the ability to actually invite them over for dinner. So they had astronauts coming over for dinner. My mom can remember some of that. And the people that he worked with, they had a culture of camaraderie. They were just such I guess so into teamwork. It was such a community. They were doing something that had never been done before, and they were working together. And that culture, I got to experience a little bit of that from talking to them when I went to their reunion in 2008. My grandfather had passed away, and I had the opportunity to go and meet the people that he had worked with. And they just had so many stories. I was able to write some of them down. But one of them was, one of the stories was of my grandfather and just the sense of relief that he had when Apollo 8 made contact after they had gone around the moon, and they made contact at just the right time. And I think it was just such a relief for him because the guidance system that they had built, along with all the other systems on the spacecraft, had worked. And the fact that they made contact at the perfect right time meant everything worked and they were safe. And so his team just had such a community, and so I noticed that community grows in the context of discovery. And I see a lot of that in this room and in this organization, this team. So the Apollo program was an adventure for my whole family, not just my grandfather, but my grandmother as well. She was a painter. Her name's Verna Brady, and she captured the adventure of the Apollo program in some of her paintings. So, and I think it was also an opportunity for her to really process through all that they were experiencing. So the painting in the middle, that's called Apollo Spire. And the one on the right, it might be hard to see. It's easier to see in person. It's called Footsteps on the Moon, and it has kind of like a corrugated texture, so it looks like the boot prints. If you're ever in a video call with me, it's on my wall in my office. And so you can probably guess why my company is called Footstep Aerospace. So actually, I'm going to go back one. So my grandfather he encouraged my growth in my scientific interest. One of the ways that he encouraged that was through an astronomy experiment that we did together. My older brother had bought me a little telescope, and my grandfather went out on the deck with me, and we set it up in the middle of the day, which, who sets up a telescope in the middle of the day? We pointed it at the sun. Do not do that. But we projected the image of the sun onto a piece of paper, and he had drawn circles, and we projected it, and we drew where the sunspots were. Then the next day we went and did the same thing, and we drew where the sunspots were. Each day the sunspots were migrating, and over the course of, I guess it was about a month, we were able to watch the sun rotate and measure the rotation rate of the sun. And so it just kind of brings everything into a sense of reality, that this is real. It creates a sense of wonder. Another part of my space education program with him was that they let me binge watch, before this was a term, the HBO miniseries From the Earth to the Moon. I'm sure some of you have seen that. I learned a lot from that, and I still watch it from time to time. And my wife and I have been. She hasn't seen it all yet, so we're continuing to go through it. But that was I took over their living room for like a week to watch that. I was always rummaging through their house looking for historical artifacts, and there were a lot of them. One of the things they had was a gyro that I think was from the Apollo 8 spacecraft, the command module. It was encased in, I think, acrylic, and there were two pieces. There was kind of the main piece in acrylic. Then there was a spinner, so you could actually spin it. It was encased, but you could spin it, and you could spin the gyro. And apparently, when they first got it back, I guess in the late 60s, early 70s, it spun for a lot longer, and there was less friction. But I grew up in this kind of in the shadow of this experience of the Apollo program. My grandfather passed away when I was 11, but he left behind a legacy of curiosity and adventure. So another major influence is my father. So that was my grandfather on my mother's side. My father, his father, so my grandfather on his side, was also an engineer and a leader. But my dad, and his name's Jack Cheney, my dad's career focused on things like carpentry and art and music and helping others through art therapy. He was an art therapist. He isn't an engineer, but he's a nurturer, and he supports every interest that I have. He's done that throughout my life, and he continues to do. Eventually he's going to help me build an observatory, I think, in the backyard. So I have him on my list for that. So he was really with me, every step of the way. This picture in the top left, we went to a parent-child space camp. I got to go to space camp twice. The first time, it must have been that I was too young to go on my own, but it was kind of neat. They had a parent-child opportunity, and that was just a lot of fun. So we're piloting, I think it was supposed to be a mock-up of Endeavour. I think they had in Atlantis an Endeavour simulator of sorts. This was near Ames Research Center, and I think it's the Mars Museum now, if you've ever been there. They might still have the space shuttle mock-ups there. So it was pretty cool. My dad also went with me on telescope adventures. So he could tell I was just really into this stuff. and he I think tried to reflect that interest and that enthusiasm. And so he would spend long, cold nights with me in the telescope looking at the stars. And there was, fortunately, a really great amateur observatory in the area that he brought me to. So that's on the bottom right. That's me looking through the eyepiece of this 30-inch telescope of an amateur observatory. That became my favorite place to go with him. And in 2003, we went there for the Mars opposition. I think it was the closest it had been, or it would be, for 60,000 years, something like that. And my dad, he climbed up on that same ladder there that I'm on in that picture. He climbed up there with a 2003 era digital camera and tried to take a picture. If you've ever tried to take a picture through a telescope, it's really hard to get it lined up. And so what he did is he flipped it into video mode, and he's like, once in a while it passes through the frame. So he did video mode and was able to get a few frames of Mars. And so I put those together in Photoshop, and that's the picture on the left here. Around 2003, that picture is a composite of multiple frames. Fast forward about 20 years, I'm still into astronomy, and I had better tools for processing imagery, and I found the video file from when we took that picture of Mars, and so I reprocessed it, and that's the picture on the right. 20 years later, it looks a little bit more clear, I think. So my dad was always encouraging, and he was always kind of along for the ride with me, and he still is. So my grandfather opened up the world of space for me, and my dad gave me the encouragement to really engage with it. So my family's influence had an impact on my career as well as my hobbies. I'm going to talk about my hobbies first because that's more fun. I'm sure most of us would agree. My career is really cool too, but so this is, I'm still doing astronomy. This is something called electronically assisted astronomy, EAA. Some of you might have run into this. This is kind of my favorite way to do astronomy. Basically, I have a telescope. This is the setup during the solar eclipse, and that's blue tape. I don't recommend using blue tape for that purpose, but I was being very careful. But basically, I had my telescope hooked up to a camera, hooked up to the laptop, and what I do with EAA is I'll take a frame of an image, maybe a 45-second picture of a nebula, and then I have it do it again and again and again, and the camera is feeding these images to the laptop, and every time there's another picture, the laptop automatically stacks and processes the new image, and so you can watch it over the course of a couple minutes. You can go as long as you want, a couple hours. The image gets more and more clear over time. Something I really enjoy about that is that it's very easy to share it with other people. If you're trying to look through an eyepiece, first of all, your eye can't pick up color at that level of dimness. Even with a huge telescope, you usually can't see any color. But when you're able to use a camera, you can see all the vibrant colors, and you can all experience it together. This very tangible experience of something that's so many light years away, and I think it really kind of makes a connection where people can see this is a real thing. And I think it's probably similar to the experience of, I've never done this, but making a contact through a satellite. That you're engaging with something that's in space and somebody else is connected to it. It's this kind of community engagement with space thing, which I think is pretty cool. And just to share, these are some of usually when I do this, I then take all the images and I do like a really nice stacking of the images and processing. These are some of my favorites that I've gotten. The one of Jupiter, you can see the shadow of one of the moons on the surface. And my wife actually helped me with the one on the right, the Rosette Nebula. She helped me take that picture. She's my navigator when I'm like trying to point the telescope. She'll be like, "Oh, there it is. Okay, stop there." And my wife has gotten to experience a good amount of astronomy too. I took her to an astronomy night with the amateur astronomy club nearby, and I warned her ahead of time. I said, people that are really enthusiastic about space are really nice. They're very friendly and love to share their hobby. And she said afterwards, that was an understatement. These people are great. Like they're like, oh yeah, you can borrow our telescope, you know. And I think that kind of openness and enthusiasm is something that I see in this community as well. So my work has focused. So you talked about my hobby, and I'm going to talk about work. My work has focused on launch integration, mission management, small sat innovation. I've had the joy of being able to be a project manager, which is kind of neat because that's what my grandfather did. And I've even been in some of the same places physically as he was. When I worked for NASA LSP, I would go to the same building in Florida where he had gone during the Apollo program. My grandmother had been there watching the astronauts on Apollo 11 getting into the van headed to the pad. So it's kind of neat to be, sitting at the restaurant downstairs in the building, eating a barbecue sandwich, and realizing this is where my grandmother was when Apollo 11 launched. So, I've had the joy of being able to work in space things, and one of my favorites is launching AMSAT satellites. So Jerry talked about the first time that we met, and he has the email to prove it, that even before that, back in 2014, I was pestering him for deliverables. And I think he turned those in. I don't think those are still due, but I've been pestering him for deliverables for, I guess, over a decade, but he gets a little break right now because I left NASA, so until we have another mission together. So we like reminiscing about that. And in all my experience, I've just been so impressed by AMSAT. At some of the conferences, when you do a contact, like, the CubeSat Developers Workshop, there are times that you'll go outside and do a contact as one of the satellites flying over. I think that's just a really great way to kind of bring it home and kind of create a connection with what's really happening. Everybody at those conferences is working on some mission, but to really have that experience, maybe some of them haven't launched their mission yet and they haven't contacted their satellite, but I just think that's kind of a cool thing, that you're able to just bring your radio outside and make a contact. At this symposium, I've been enjoying hearing about all the educational initiatives that you have going on. I think that's really important and really good. Your keep it simple mindset, I think, is something that especially new and also seasoned teams, I think, can really benefit from. In my experience, I'm constantly sending teams that are struggling with various things. I'm like, why don't you talk to AMSAT? They've got a lot of experience with this kind of stuff. And especially when it comes to teams that are trying to figure out their communication architecture. I've sent them your way so many times. And also I want to do a shout out to the SatNogs network. Some of the teams that I've worked with have really benefited greatly from being able to make their initial contact, or sometimes I think even their only contact through the network. And just for them to know that their satellite, made some transmission at some point, I think is hugely valuable. And sometimes, making it possible for them to recover from initial anomalies, I think that's very valuable, and I think the community is very grateful. So, in conclusion, we're all part of humanity's adventure of discovery, and I want to encourage you to consider who you've had an impact on and who you might have an impact on. Whether you know it or not, you're paving the way for others. My love for space has been passed down from generations, and I think it's going to continue passing down. So my kids are going to have their own interests, I'm sure, and I'm gonna be there to encourage whatever they're into, But I think my 2-year-old daughter has shown some interest in space. One of her favorite words is globular. And this is her first astrophoto. She at least likes pressing buttons that make the camera do a fun noise. She actually took that picture. That was when she was 1. This is like a year ago this week, I think. She's 2 now. But, this was during the day because of her bedtime, but we got a nice picture of the moon. So I want to thank you all for what you do, engaging in discovery and inspiring the next generation of explorers. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. That's inspiring, and I love the pictures. Robert, could you come up here for a minute? Robert, the board of directors and the officers want to thank you for 5 years of service and lots of mission accomplished, including getting us through some of our hardest times, frankly. So this plaque is for you to put on your wall, and remember never to volunteer for anything again.
Thank you very much. That's not what my wife said.
Here's the box for it. All right. Good night. No, I'm just kidding. So we've got some prizes to raffle. How about we take just a minute and get them up front here so we're not going back and forth.